Welcome to the Georgia Highlands College Math 97 and Math 99 instructional videos. In this video segment, we'll be putting together some information from the last two videos on what is a quadratic equation and what is the zero product principle to help us answer a new question. How do you solve a quadratic equation by factoring? So the first step in this process is to make sure that the quadratic equation is in standard form. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. After you have gotten the equation into that form, you'll simply factor the polynomial side of the equation. After you have it factored, you'll have two or three factors being multiplied and equaling 0. At that point, you'll be able to apply the zero product principle. The zero product principle has us set each factor equal to 0. You'll solve each of those zero product principle equations, and then finally, you'll check your solutions by substituting into the original equation. Let's take a look at a couple of examples to help us understand this process of solving quadratic equations with factoring. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen here, I have the quadratic equation x squared minus 6x plus 5. The first step in my process is to write this equation in standard form. Hopefully you notice that this equation is already in standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. In this particular equation, a is understood to be 1. It always goes with the x squared term. Negative 6 is b, going with the x term. And our constant term here is 5. So we'll go ahead and proceed through the other steps of this process. The second step is to factor the polynomial side of the equation. Well, using our methods for factoring trinomials, we'll start out by asking ourselves, what are the factors of 5 that multiply? Shoot, let me start over on the, sorry, I got tongue-tied there for a second. No. Okay. We'll begin by taking a look at an example of a quadratic equation. So looking at the left-hand side of the screen, you see we have the quadratic equation, x squared minus 6x plus 5, where a is understood to be 1, b is negative 6, and c is 5. The first step in our process is to make sure that this equation is in standard form, and as you can see, it already is. So we'll move on to step number 2, which is to factor the polynomial side of the equation. Well, we have a trinomial here. So from previous videos, you should know that we are able to factor this side of the equation by asking ourselves the question, what factors multiply to make 5, but add to make negative 6? And when we think about that for a moment, you should be able to figure out that those factors are negative 5 and negative 1. Negative 5 and negative 1 multiply back up to make positive 5, and they add or combine to make negative 6. So the left-hand side of this equation factors as x minus 5 times x minus 1 equals 0. Well, since this is an equation that we're solving and not just an expression that we're factoring, we have to apply the zero product principle at this point. Let me just remind you that the zero product principle says if you're multiplying things together that equal 0, then one of those factors had to be equal to 0. So if you look at this part of our process, you should see that that is two factors being multiplied equaling 0. So to apply the zero product principle, we simply set each of those factors equal to 0, because we know at least one of them had to be 0 to be able to multiply and make 0. Then we simply solve these linear equations. So for this first one, I'll add 5 to both sides, giving that x is 5. And for this other one, I would add 1 to both sides, yielding that x is equal to 1. So we have two potential solutions here, and I say potential because we have not checked them yet. So to check them, we plug in each potential solution separately into the original equation. So my original equation is x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. And I'm going to come back and plug in 5 to check the first one here. So 5 squared is 25. Negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. And then I'm adding a 5 onto the end there. If I combine those first two constants on the left-hand side, I get 25 and negative 30 make negative 5. And then adding that to positive 5 gives 0. So we can safely say that 5 is a solution to this quadratic equation. And now let's check 1. So once again, I have x being squared and negative 6 times x plus 5 equaling 0. I come back this time and plug in 1 to check that one out. 1 squared is 1. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. And then I add the 5 on the end. 1 and negative 6 make negative 5. Plus 5, of course, gives 0, which is our true statement. 0 equals 0. So now that we've checked both of these out, we can safely say that this particular quadratic equation has two solutions, one of them being 5 and one of them being 1. You could have also written this in set notation by writing braces and separating your solutions with a comma. Okay, so moving on to the example on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that this equation is quadratic because it is a degree 2 equation. However, it is not in standard form. So I've got to get this thing set equal to 0 to be able to apply the zero product principle after I've factored. So my first step with this particular equation is to subtract 2x from both sides. There's my 0 pair. And now I have 4x squared minus 2x equals 0. So I can take a look at the left-hand side of the equation, and I notice that there is a GCF in both of those terms that can be taken out. So that's what I will proceed to do. And there is a common factor of 2 and a common factor of x. So when I divide that GCF out, I'm left with 2x and negative 1. So a factor of 2x minus 1. That's still equaling 0. And at this point, I'd just like to bring to your attention that I actually have 3 factors here. I have a factor of 2, a factor of x, and a factor of 2x minus 1. It doesn't matter how many factors you're multiplying together to be able to apply the zero product principle. It can be 3, it can be 10. Most of the time we'll have 2 factors multiplying together, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're multiplying together to make 0, you had to be multiplying with 0 at some point. So we'll proceed to go ahead and apply the zero product principle. Now, most students get really confused when they have a coefficient out front. And all you have to do is say, well, 2 does not equal 0. Never has, never will, so you don't even have to worry about the 2. You could also think of it as you could potentially divide that 2 off of both sides and it would just go away. So it plays no role in our actual solutions. On the other hand, x has the potential of equaling 0, and 2x minus 1 could equal 0 as well. Well, there's no work to do with the x equals 0. We've already isolated the variable, and so we have a potential solution of 0 for this quadratic equation. And so I just need to solve for this last equation by first adding 1 to both sides. And now I have 2x equals 1. Divide both sides by 2 to isolate the variable. And I'm left with x equals 1/2. So I now have 2 potential solutions and I need to check both of them. So the first one I'll check is x equals 0. Remember, you should always go back to the original equation when you're checking. That just ensures that if you've made any errors further down in your equation, that if you go back to the original equation, it'll actually catch those errors. So I'm just going to plug 0 in for x this first time to see how it works out. Well, 0 squared is just 0, so I have 4 times 0 equals 2 times 0, which is 0 itself. So 0 equals 0. It works out. So 0 is definitely one of our solutions. And now we're going to check 1/2. So I have 4 times x squared equals 2 times x. And this time I will plug in the potential solution 1/2. Now don't be afraid of the fractional math. We can handle it. We just have to remember our different rules. So I'm going to square 1/2, and you can look at it 2 ways. You can think of that as being 1/2 times 1/2, which would give 1/4, or you can use your exponent rule that says that the square gets distributed to the top and the bottom, so you have 1 squared over 2 squared. So I'll just write that intermediate step there, 1 squared divided by 2 squared. And that equals 2 times 1/2. Well, remember, that 2 out front can be rewritten as 2 over 1 times 1/2, as well as this 4 out on the other side. That can be written over 1 as well. Sometimes it's nice to put things over 1 just to keep it easy on the eyes so that everything's in fractional form. So we have 4 over 1 times 1 over 4 equals, all right, on this side we have 2 over 2. And I'm running out of room, so I'm going to come right back up over here to finish this check off. So the left-hand side is now 4 over 4, because you multiply fractions straight across, equals 2 over 2. Well, anything divided by itself is just 1, so we end up getting that 1 equals 1, which is a true statement, meaning that 1/2 is a valid solution. So we have 2 solutions to this quadratic equation, 0 and 1/2. I hope that this video has helped you out with understanding how to solve quadratic equations using factoring and the zero product property. If you have any other questions or still not clear about what a quadratic equation is or what the zero product principle says, we have videos on that. You can go back and watch those videos. If you have questions about how to apply the process, after watching this video, please feel free to ask your Highlands instructor for more clarification. Thank you.